It's not super large, but it's bigger than standard plane. John Hopkins let him. They did not make him take out anything.
Tell a couple of because there's a lot of people who don't particularly care for university presses for that reason, particularly Richard McMurray. All right, just to show you where we are, had we gone straight on that dirt road, we ended up here. We would have walked on down this little road to this point, and you would be looking straight at Fort Henry. The outer marker, the navigational marker, which flashes on and off, called, you get your river map, it's called the Fort Henry navigation marker, is right there. And it's about 15 feet down. It's still intact. Tennessee River has freshwater mussels, and the mussel, I've talked to a couple of mussel divers. You get down there on a good sunny day, if it hadn't been raining, the water's fairly clear, you can see it. And you can feel the walls of the fort. It was flooded when they did the Tennessee Valley Authority thing in the 1930s when it went underwater. If you get the blue and gray magazine on it, there's an aerial picture of Fort Henry. You can pick it out because it's lined by trees. Where we are now is right there. So this is the road to Boswell Landing, and we're right here. So this is where you have your Department of the Interior, Department of Agriculture working together to interpret this, because they know what they've got. There's a couple places over at the homestead, which is further on up the trace. There's a couple Civil War related sites up here. They have a marker down at this area now, and then this marker here. They're both sort of identical to where we are. You get closer up here. So we are right here in the bend, and we're going to see this little bit of the Confederate outer works, and you can hike. There's quite a bit of the outer works that go this way that you can still see, and then the historic road that goes that way. That's the road that the Confederates will take as they're abandoning Fort Henry, coming out this way to the higher ground and then heading south where they cross Standing Rock Creek at least 5 times. So you get an idea where Fort Henry is. Here's the river in 62, and here's where we are. So you can see that on your map. So let's go ahead and go down the river. Now, just to let you know, it has gotten warmer here the last few days. Boy Scout handbook, snakes with triangular heads are not your friends.
Okay, you guys can start.
Do exactly what we're going to do with isolate the garrison. What he ends up doing in Vicksburg, he annihilates 3 enemy armies.
What's your left and right? Here's your outer works. Nice and preserved. These are not WPA reconstructions like you see in a lot of your national parks these days. These are, because of the canopy, they just don't erode. This is one of the nicest sections of earthworks you'll see. What was fishing doing? I got nervous. I thought one of those snakes had lungs.
Oh, they would be between the ditch behind them. They're supposed to be 6 feet. So these areas are actually really thick. Yeah, the worst would have continued on that way. The idea where we are right about here.
Okay, so which side were
This side. That's Fort Henry right there.
Oh, Channel.
So they're on this side of the world facing back.
Okay.
This is the north outer wall.
Okay.
We're like right here, and then across the road, here's that dirt road went in.
They would be
Here and on this side, right, because the Federals are coming in on that side.
okay. You said that's where Fort Henry would be?
That's where Fort Henry is, still.
In the water.
Yeah, that's the north wall, so south of there. So the fort itself goes south of there.
Where would Panther Island have been?
I'll get to that in just a second. If you can see on the peninsula over there, you can kind of see a house sticking up through the trees. That's Fort Heiman.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so Fort Heiman was slightly to the south of where Fort Henry is, that dominates the high ground over there. That's the guy who had already built. I came in there in the 80s, and they had everything parceled out for housing lots, and that's when Callaway County got it going about preserving Fort.
It's well worth seeing if you ever have time.
Oh, I'm sure.
That house there. We kept telling Jimmy Joe, if you don't retire, maybe we can move you, buy that house and move you into that house, because the view from up there is fabulous. Plus, he's got a big rock that juts out over the river.
Right.
It looks it's a great view. So if you go up there and you look down this way, you can see how Heiman dominates Fort Henry, which is why the Confederates will start building things over there in December of 1861. And of course, it's named for Adolphus Heiman, as I said, an architect, Prussian architect from Atlanta, and he will raise one of the 2 Irish regiments of Tennessee. In this case, it's the 10th. His lieutenant colonel is Randall McGavock of the McGavock family. Carnton Mansion was the McGavock home, and McGavock was the first mayor of Nashville. And people ask me, what the heck is a Prussian doing commanding an Irish regiment? I said, they get along on the beer front. It's beer. They just argue, is it Guinness or some German beer what they're going to be drinking that day. So Heiman is not a professional soldier, but he's pretty energetic. He does a good job because he's an architect. He knows he's organizationally very oriented and gets the outer works going and the main part of the fort going. And then when Tillman shows up here and Joseph Dixon, professionals, they will start ramping up everything, figuring out how many guns are going to be here. If you look on map 3, there were 17 guns at Fort Henry, 11 on the river, 6 facing inland. And a lot of those guns will be facing to the north. Some of the guns will be facing that way in case ironclads get by, they could shoot them in the rear. And then you've got a handful of guns that are going to be facing out this way to protect against infantry assault. So you have your main part of Fort Henry, an inner line of works, which is completely underwater, and then the outer works, which don't extend much below the Fort Henry original road that you saw. And Piney Creek is going to be, and the swampy area here is going to be the right flank of that. So here's what Grant's going to do. They get very good intelligence on Fort Henry. They get zero intelligence on Fort Donelson because the Confederates a couple miles downstream put a boom across the river and boats couldn't get over the boom to see it. So they never really knew how strong or weak Fort Donelson was. But they had very good intel on here. When the timberclads start moving up and down the rivers, they start checking things out, they start taking notes, they start taking videotapes and Instagram pictures and put it on YouTube, here's what's going on. And that's basically the intelligence comes back to Grant in Cairo. Now Grant and Halleck is Grant's boss. Halleck will replace John C. Fremont. Halleck is Grant's boss, and basically what Halleck is worried about, if you flip back to your first map real quick, if you look where Fort Henry and Donelson are in the center of your map, and you've got Confederates here at Columbus, you've got Fort Henry and Donelson down here, and you've got Confederates at Bowling Green, you've got Confederates at Russellville, Hopkinsville, Clarksville. Is what Halleck's worried about is if Grant comes all the way down here, he is now closer to Nashville, but he has major Confederate forces that could fall on his rear. So Halleck is afraid of Grant coming down here and getting chopped up. Grant will go up and visit Halleck in St. Louis. Here's my plan based on my gunboat intelligence. I think we can take Fort Henry, not a problem. We'll land troops on one side, land troops on the other side. We'll take it. We'll bag the garrison. And Halleck basically just shoots him down. In fact, he gets up out of the meeting and walks out of his office in St. Louis while Grant's got his maps all over. He's pointing and trying to make his case. The guy that Halleck wants to command this expedition is Charles Ferguson Smith, who had been Grant and Sherman's instructor at West Point, because the rumors of Grant tipping the bottle had reached Halleck, and he didn't want this guy possibly being drunk. He will send a spy to serve on Grant's staff, Lieutenant Colonel James Birdsey McPherson, ostensibly as his engineer officer, which he does. This is the same McPherson that will be killed at the Battle of Atlanta, commanding the Army of the Tennessee. And if you read Brenton's account, he's the medical officer. He's interviewing, or he's talking to McPherson, and basically says the only alcohol in this army is in my medical traveling kit. So that goes back up to Halleck. Says Grant's not drinking, but Grant is not one of Halleck's favorites, and Halleck will basically try to stab Grant in the back the entire campaign. Does not shed credit on Halleck's character. Halleck has ability. He's a fabulous staff officer, but he has his problems of who he likes and who he doesn't like, and he doesn't particularly care for Grant. So when Smith, and Grant's a little worried about being, ranking Smith, actually Smith ranks Grant in terms of commission of Brigadier General, but he works it out because he admires this guy. I mean, if you look through the official records, he doesn't order Smith to do things, he asks them. General Smith, would you mind taking your troops over to here? McClernand and Lew Wallace, when Wallace gets the 3rd Division, General Wallace, you will take your division and march down this road and stop at this point. So he's asking Smith, he's ordering the other two commanders. So what Grant's basic plan is to bag the garrison. He doesn't just want to capture the fort and open up the Tennessee River. He wants the garrison. So the fleet will start massing in Paducah on February 2nd. On the 3rd, they'll start heading up this way, taking with them John McClernand's division of troops. John McClernand, political general from Illinois, been a congressman. And actually, as a political general, he wasn't too bad, although he would run off his mouth about how much he hated West Pointers, kind of like what John Palmer would do in the Atlanta campaign. And but he actually, I mean, look at his high point in his career is the Battle of Arkansas Post. He captures Arkansas Post. So McClernand is not an idiot. He's not like a Ben Butler or people like that, or a Milroy or some of these other guys that will show up. He's actually fairly capable. So the plan is to drop his division down on that side of the Tennessee River at a place called Itra's Landing, which is 8 miles downstream. He will get there about the 4th and then realize it's too far. The terrain is like this, and it's intermittent raining, so when you have gullies and washes, what happens, because you've got limestone like you do up in where you guys live, and the ground saturates quickly and the groundwater kicks back into the ravines, and the ravines fill up very fast. And the road system coming from here to there is not all that good. So they get back on the steamboats and come up here to a place called Bailey's Landing, which is 4 miles downstream, and that's where McClernand will drop his troops, and they'll go up and build earthwork protection. The earthworks are still there, and he will call it Camp Halleck, and he will send an email to Halleck. I dubbed this Camp Halleck. Talk about sucking up. That's exactly what he's doing here. Sucking up to the really big guy. So while that's going on, Grant is here with Flag Officer Andrew Holt Foote on one of the gunboats. There's Panther Island. That bit of trees out there, that is the top of Panther Island. Okay. So the Confederates put torpedoes on the other side, and they zero their guns in on this side of Panther Island. So they're doing a gunboat reconnaissance, and this is where the humorous story shows up. They're on one of the ironclads, and one of the sailors pulls out one of the torpedoes. They cleared a number of them before, plus with the rains, the high water rising, it will snap the buoy rope that holds it to the ground, the river bottom. They recovered a number of the torpedoes, but this one they pull out of the water starts fizzing. And everybody's beating feet down the side deck to get up, to take the ladder up onto the roof, and as the story goes, Foote beats Grant up there, and Grant supposedly says that's the last time Navy beats Army in this campaign. Starting that wonderful Army-Navy rivalry. So they get really good eyes on here. They're counting guns. They'll exchange some shots with Fort Henry. Fort Henry's got only 2 guns that can really range downstream quite a distance. A 10-inch Columbiad smoothbore, we'll see one over Fort Donelson, and a 24-pound rifled gun. The other guns are going to be 42-pounders and mostly 32-pounders. You're going to max out with those about 800 to 900 yards, whereas the Columbiad and the smoothbore, you can kick out to 2 miles to 3 miles, depending on how big your powder charge is. The shell of a 10-inch Columbiad is 128 pounds. It takes 60 pounds of powder to make that go boom. So those guns, needless to say, load much slower than your 32-pounders, because a man can pick up a 32-pound ball is about the size of a bowling ball, just weighs more, and they put the powder bag in and they roll the ball down. And with these other guns, they have a block and tackle system that when the gun recoils back, they erect it in front of the barrel, and they use the pulley to put the powder bags in, ram that down, and then the pulley, they just roll the ball on there and lift it up with muscle power. So you're going to get maybe one shot maybe every several minutes. Whereas the 32-pounders, if they're good, they can do about a round a minute. But they're very short range. No, go ahead.
The chute that
is on
that
that
he
side,
comes down the west
between the
side.
island and the opposite bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what
Down
they
the west
clear,
side.
and the guns are not zeroed on that side.
So he just comes down the chute right to where that marker is.
But not quite as close to the mark. He gets about 400 or 500 yards away.
Yeah.
And then what happens is the transports go back to Paducah and pick up Charles Ferguson Smith Division, and they will land him at Pine Bluff, which is several miles downstream on the opposite side, on the Kentucky side of things, and he will march down this way. So see what the Grant's plan is. I'm going to send the gunboats in, we'll reduce the fort. McClernand will come down this way, Smith will come down this way and take Fort Heiman, so that if something happens here, you can put artillery, field artillery in Fort Heiman, and you're looking down on Fort Henry, makes Fort Henry completely untenable, even with a 6-pounder. Get a battery of 6-pounders up there. Confederates are going to really wish they had kept Fort Henry a lot better. So he's planning to capture the garrison. Now, I usually, when I do my lecture on this, I talk about the 2 military theorists that are contemporaries of Napoleon that, through Dennis Hart Mahan at West Point, are taught to United States Army officers. The first one is Antoine Jomini, who was Swiss, served in the French Army, and he will write his book and basically argue set points of advance, and you move from objective. It's very geometric warfare. You move from point A to point B, secure lines of supply, and then that's your objective, and then you pick out what your next objective is, and that's the way Halleck and Buell and McClellan fight the war. Von Clausewitz, who served in the Prussian Army, in my opinion, gets it more right. I also studied the Napoleonic Wars. And von Clausewitz says, basically, you attack the political system of your foe, and the way you do that is you destroy their army. So Grant's thinking Clausewitzian, his boss thinks Jominian, and Grant will be Clausewitzian for the rest of the war. He's not going to Richmond in '64 to capture Richmond. He's going to Richmond because he knows Lee's army is going to be there, and he wants to smash Lee. Doesn't quite work out that way, but that's the plan. He's not like McClellan, every other goof in the Army of the Potomac, trying to go down and capture the flag, which never wins wars, by the way. Destroying the enemy army does. So that's what Grant wants to do, is take the about 3,500 troops that are in this area off the chessboard. The other flip side is it opens the Tennessee River 200 plus miles when he captures Fort Henry all the way to Florence, Alabama. They don't see a great clad soldier the entire way, and I'll talk about Phelps River raid in a minute. So on the February 6th, as the gunboats, the ironclads coming out one by one in column, and they shake out into line of battle, if you will,
followed by the timberclads, the Tyler, the Lexington, and the Conestoga in the rear. The bow guns of the 3 city class ironclads that are involved, which are the Cincinnati, St. Louis, and Carondelet, those